Interesting how reactionary this issue, people can become. And institutions and individuals and sometimes even the press are just, it's strange. I've been really, really surprised by this. I've been really surprised at the pushback. I expected it. You're dealing with powerful institutions, but I did not expect it to be so broad across society. I think it's very deep. It's very deep to blame the woman.
I'm Masay Yunus, here with Ceasefire magazine, and I'm with Kirby, director of The Hunting Ground. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, pleasure to be here.
Can you tell us a bit about what the film is about and why is it important?
Well, the film is about sexual assault on college campuses, and really, you can describe it as an epidemic. In our film, we say 16% or more women are sexually assaulted on college campuses, and of course men are, but women are at much greater numbers. And the problem is not only that the sexual assault exists, but it's how, and it's existed for decades, but also colleges and universities have covered this up for decades. And that is what we find so shocking. You think about college campuses as places where the issue of sexual assault, the issue of safety of women would have been addressed. And in fact, it's extremely dangerous in many places in the United States.
What made you want to address the issue of rape? And your previous film addresses the issue of rape in the military, and now you've gone to college campuses.
Well, I made the film with my producer, Amy Ziering, and after we had finished The Invisible War, which was the film about rape in the military, we were moving to an entirely different subject that had nothing to do with sexual assault. But as we were taking around The Invisible War to college campuses, we started getting responses in the Q&As after the screenings, people saying, this happens here. And in fact, oftentimes the conversation would be more about sexual assault on college campus than the subject of the film, which was sexual assault in the military. And then we started getting letters and emails from people imploring us to make the film, oftentimes saying, I was assaulted on campus and nothing was done about it. I was blamed for the assault. And then once we started looking into it, we were very surprised to find that it was as rampant as it was, and that the schools were handling it in such a irresponsible way.
Have you been questioned, as a male director addressing an issue that overwhelmingly affects women? How do people respond to that?
Sexual assault, even sexual assault of women, is not just a women's issue. To begin with, it's in most cases men doing the assaulting. But secondly, just because it's this large, actually majority of the population is at risk, entire society is responsible for protecting them, for creating conditions where this doesn't exist. It's been the women for whom this has been a very important issue, and you've seen very little male faculty, male administrators, male advocates in the field, and I'm appalled by that, frankly.
The film asserts that money is one of the major reasons why sexual assault isn't taken seriously by universities. Isn't there a wider system which enables men to have such power over women?
Well, there is. We live in a society, certainly, where there is misogyny. There's no question. There's a cultural reason this exists. Basically, colleges and universities are disincentivized to investigate this. And it's not because administrators want this to happen on their campus. They don't. But they're more concerned, they made the decision to be more concerned about their reputation, which has a direct relationship to money in two very important ways. One, in the United States in particular, the quality of the student applying is very important because it creates this image of it creates the fact of, if you have better quality students, you have a better quality institution. So if a school had a reputation for rapes happening, then that would get in the way of that. So they cover that up. And likewise in the United States, all schools, even public schools, get a lot of money from private donations. And so again, if they had a reputation as having rapes happening on that campus, that would dissuade people from donating. So what they've done is they've put the reputation of their school, the financial health of their school, if you will, over the health and safety of their students.
In the screening, somebody in the Q&A suggested that rape culture wasn't a real thing. or at least that there should be some sort of discourse around it. What do we do about this culture of denial that exists even after the facts are being presented?
Well, you bring up a very, interesting point, is that even though the statistics are there, even though it's kind of overwhelmingly evident that this is a problem, there's still a significant portion of the society that is trying to deny this. And I think it goes very deep in all societies, and which is the reason that sexual assault is not talked about. I mean, one of the reasons sexual assault is not talked about is when a survivor comes forward, they're often blamed, they're often questioned as to whether it happened. This is a form of individual denialism. Well, that extends to the whole culture. So again, what I'm trying to do with my film is, it's part of awareness, is put the fact right in front of the entire culture so that it becomes harder to deny. There's always going to be that force.
And also, what's really interesting in your film is that the main participants are young women who are directly kind of addressing that. So, do you see a kind of hope in the kind of new generation of activists?
I do see hope. I absolutely do. I mean, these women and a few men. There's probably a couple of dozen around the country who were sort of started to frame this as a national issue. What you saw, this started about 2 years ago in the United States. Before that, there would be an individual case that would come up, and the press would write about it some, and then it would go away, and then there would another issue would come up at different schools, 6 months later. So it seemed like, well, maybe a few schools or maybe a few dozen schools had problems. Well, what particularly the two lead characters in our film did is they started to realize that all schools had problems, because they started reaching out to survivors, to activists at campuses around the country, and started comparing notes and realizing that not only was there a problem on all those schools, but the schools were responding in the same way. So they went back and they said, this is a national problem.
Actually, the issue of sexual assault on university campuses in the UK has kind of come up on the agenda this year. And we actually know that a third of female students face sexual assault in universities here. Knowing that this is a global issue, is there a way of linking up the struggle?
Yes, I think it's important, because obviously there's experiences and strategies that can be shared country to country. Although each country's sort of political and legal structure is different, but just as it's strange, just as there's a tendency to deny in like the United States as this happened, you see that in the UK too. I've heard, time and again, this isn't a problem in the UK, it's a problem in the United States. When I make my films about problems in the United States, not a problem in the UK. Well, the problem of sexual assault in the military definitely exists. The problem of sexual assault on college campuses definitely exists. So, yes, I mean, it would, I am hopeful, at some time in the near future, that there's a conference in the United States that brings together activists and survivors from around the country. I think it would be very interesting to bring over people from Canada and the United Kingdom as part of that.
Kirby Dick, thank you for speaking to Ceasefire.
Thank you.